In the quiet, mist-covered hills of Eastern Europe, there stood a mansion that seemed to have been forgotten by time. The once grand estate of Lady Evelina Durrell, a noblewoman of great wealth and impeccable lineage, now stood under the heavy weight of neglect. The windows, once sparkling and full of life, were now draped in dust and shadows, their glass reflecting only the dim, ghostly light of a dying day. Lady Evelina had lived a life of isolation, never venturing far from her ancestral home. It was on one such lonely evening, when the wind howled like the mournful wail of the damned, that a peculiar gift arrived at her doorstep. A servant, pale-faced and trembling, presented her with an intricately wrapped box, marked with strange symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Curiosity piqued, Evelina untied the ribbon and lifted the lid to reveal a mirror. It was nothing extraordinary at first glance. Its frame was carved from dark mahogany, inlaid with silver that glimmered under the flickering candlelight. But the mirror's surface, it was unsettling. A faint, swirling mist clung to its edges, and the reflection seemed not to match the room behind her. Evelina's heart skipped a beat, but she dismissed the strange sensation as nothing more than her imagination. As days passed, strange things began to happen within the mansion. At night, the air grew thick and cold as though the house itself were breathing, and the shadows seemed to move of their own accord. Evelina would awaken to the sound of whispers, soft and insistent, calling her name from the depths of the house. The servants, once loyal and unwavering, began to leave in droves, speaking of feeling watched, of hearing footsteps when no one was there. But still, Evelina remained. The mansion was her home after all. One evening as she passed by the mirror, a sudden compulsion overtook her. She stopped and gazed into its depths. The reflection was not her own, it was a twisted, grotesque version of herself, her eyes black as coal, her skin deathly pale. It smiled at her, a wicked, knowing smile, and Evelina recoiled in horror. But the reflection did not vanish. Instead it spoke. "You are not who you think you are, Lady Evelina," it hissed, its voice low and rasping. "I have been waiting for you." Frightened, she stepped back, her breath quickening. What was this? Was it a vision? A trick of the light? But no, there was something more to this. Something ancient. Something evil. Over the following days, the occurrences grew more sinister. Evelina began to hear voices, distinct, accusing voices, speaking to her of things she had never done. A servant's death that she could not remember, a betrayal she never committed, whispers of her own dark past, things so vile that they left her frozen in terror. One night, unable to bear the mounting dread, Evelina sought the counsel of a local sage, an old woman known for her knowledge of the occult. The sage looked at her with pity as she entered, and immediately she understood. "The mirror," the sage whispered. "It is cursed. It holds something dark, something ancient. It is not just a reflection you see, Lady Evelina. It is a prison. A demon has been trapped inside and now, it is free." Evelina's hands trembled. "What do I do? How can I stop it?" The sage's eyes darkened. "You must confront it. Destroy the mirror or it will consume you. But be warned, the demon is powerful and it will not go quietly." Terror gripped Evelina's heart. She had brought this upon herself, invited this horror into her life with that cursed gift. And now it was too late to turn back. That very night, she took up the sage's advice and sought the mirror once more. The house was silent, deathly so, as if the very walls were holding their breath. She stood before the mirror, its dark surface seeming to ripple as though alive. The reflection was not her own, it was the demon now, its face twisted in grotesque fury. "Foolish mortal," it sneered. "You think you can destroy me? I have been waiting for centuries." A battle of will ensued, a clash of minds and spirits that felt as if it would tear her soul apart. Evelina's heart pounded in her chest as she faced the entity within the mirror, but she was not alone. The sage's words echoed in her mind, and with every ounce of strength she had left, she reached into the depths of her fear, confronting the demon head-on. The room trembled as the mirror began to crack, the reflection distorting and writhing in agony. It was not enough. The demon fought back with a force that threatened to shatter her very being. Evelina's strength faltered, but she would not give up. With one final desperate effort, she reached out and shattered the glass, the sound of its breaking like a scream that tore through the air. But in that instant something worse happened. The demon was free. And now it was hunting her. The moment the mirror shattered, a deafening silence fell upon the mansion. Lady Evelina stood frozen, her breath shallow, her hands trembling over the jagged remnants of glass scattered across the wooden floor. The dim candlelight flickered violently, casting erratic shadows that seemed to slither along the walls like living things. Then the whispering began again. Low at first, like the wind seeping through the cracks of an ancient tomb. Then it grew, layered voices overlapping, echoing through the halls, an agonized chorus of the damned. The cold wrapped around Evelina like a vice, and a presence, vast, formless and suffocating, filled the room. The demon had been set free. From the shattered mirror, a thick, inky darkness bled outward, curling like smoke. Evelina's reflection, now fractured in a dozen shards, twisted unnaturally, each fragment displaying a different grotesque version of herself. Some weeping blood, others grinning with jagged teeth, their mouths whispering secrets she could not bear to hear. A figure rose from the darkness. It was not fully formed, not yet, but Evelina could see the outline of something tall and wretched, shifting between shapes as if trying to remember what it once was. Its eyes, hollow voids of infinite blackness, fixed on her. "You," it rasped, its voice scraping against the walls like nails on stone. "You have freed me." Evelina's mind screamed at her to run, but her legs refused to obey. The demon took a step forward. The floor beneath it cracked and blackened, as if reality itself recoiled from its presence. The air thickened with the stench of decay. Evelina could feel her skin prickling, her body instinctively recoiling from the thing before her. "You wear my face," it continued, its voice a blend of many, some familiar, some alien. "You live my life. You stole it from me." Evelina's breath hitched. "I don't know what you mean," she managed to whisper, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her own heart. The demon chuckled, a sound so devoid of warmth it sent shivers racing down her spine. "You will soon understand." The candles in the room extinguished all at once. Darkness consumed her. When Evelina awoke, she was lying on the cold marble floor of her chamber, her head throbbing. The shattered mirror was gone. No shards, no broken frame, nothing. It was as if it had never been there. But something had changed. The house felt different. The air was heavier, the silence unnatural. She could feel something watching her, something just beyond her vision, lurking in the corners of the room. Then came the first sign. A knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Evelina's blood ran cold. She had dismissed the last of her servants days ago. There was no one left in the house. Swallowing her fear, she rose shakily to her feet and approached the door, her fingers hesitant as they gripped the handle. She opened it just a sliver. Nothing. The hallway was empty, stretching into darkness. But before she could close the door, she heard it. A whisper. Not from the hallway. From inside the room. She spun around. The mirror above her vanity, an ordinary mirror that had been there for years, was no longer ordinary. In its reflection, her room was wrong. The bed was rotting, the walls cracked and oozing black tar. And standing behind her in the reflection, tall, gaunt, with hollow, blackened eyes, was the demon. It did not move. It did not breathe. Then, slowly, it raised one skeletal hand and pressed a single clawed finger to its lips. Evelina screamed. The hours that followed blurred into a haze of fear and madness. Evelina fled from room to room, but no matter where she went, the mirrors reflected something wrong. Distorted images of herself, of things that should not exist, of shadows that moved when they should not. The mansion was no longer her home. It was a prison, shifting and breathing like a living entity. Desperate, she remembered the sage's words. "You must confront it. Destroy the mirror or it will consume you." But the mirror was already gone. And yet, not gone. It had become something else. A curse that lingered in every reflection, in every shadow, in every breath of the cold night air. Evelina knew she had to act fast. There was one last hope. A powerful sorcerer who lived beyond the mountains, spoken of in hushed whispers by those who still believed in the old ways. He was said to know the secrets of demons, of curses that bound the soul. If anyone could help her, it was him. But reaching him would not be easy. The demon would not let her go so easily. As she gathered what little she could, preparing to flee the cursed mansion, a cold breath brushed against her ear. A voice, not her own, whispered from within the shadows. "You cannot run, Evelina. You belong to me now." The door slammed shut on its own, and the candlelight died. The mansion was suffocating. The walls seemed to lean inward, the air thick with an unseen presence. Lady Evelina pressed a hand to her chest, forcing herself to breathe. She had to leave now. She grabbed her cloak, her fingers trembling as she fastened the silver clasp. The demon's whispers had not stopped since the mirror shattered. They slithered through the halls, through the cold stone floors, through her very bones. "You cannot run. You are already mine. I see you." Each time she heard it, the voice was closer. She reached the grand doors of the estate, the iron handles cold beneath her touch. With all her strength, she wrenched them open. A gust of wind howled through the entrance, carrying the scent of damp earth and dying leaves. Night had fallen. The forest beyond her estate stretched out like an abyss, the twisted branches clawing at the sky. Somewhere beyond that darkness, past the rivers and forgotten villages, lay the sorcerer. He was her only hope. Without looking back, Evelina stepped into the night. The journey was treacherous. The road was no longer the one she remembered. The path twisted upon itself, leading her in circles. The trees whispered, their gnarled limbs stretching out to touch her. Shadows flickered in the distance, shapes too tall, too thin, moving in ways no living thing should move. The demon was playing with her. She quickened her pace, pushing forward through the thick fog that clung to the ground. But the moment she thought she was making progress, she saw it. A figure standing ahead. So silent. Watching. It had no face, only darkness where its features should have been. Evelina's breath hitched. Slowly she stepped backward. The figure did not move. But when she blinked, it was closer. A strangled gasp escaped her lips. She turned and ran. The wind roared past her ears. The forest blurred into a tunnel of twisting trees, their roots reaching for her like skeletal hands. She did not stop, did not dare to look back. Then, the ground vanished beneath her feet. She tumbled down a steep embankment, the world spinning. Branches lashed at her skin, the earth cold and unforgiving beneath her as she crashed to the bottom. Pain shot through her limbs, but she had no time to recover. A presence loomed above. She forced herself onto her hands and knees, her heart hammering. Silence stretched through the forest. Then, a whisper. "You fall so easily, little Evelina." She looked up. The demon was there. Standing at the top of the hill, its shape shifting and writhing, its head tilting unnaturally. It did not move. It did not need to. The shadows stretched toward her. With a strangled cry, Evelina scrambled to her feet and ran. She did not know how far she fled. Time had lost its meaning. But just when she thought her legs would give out, the forest broke apart, and before her stood a lone, crumbling tower. The sorcerer's home. Evelina stood before the tower, her breath ragged, her body trembling from exhaustion. The forest behind her was unervingly silent, as if holding its breath. The demon had stopped chasing her, but she knew it was not gone. It was waiting. Watching. The tower loomed against the night sky, its stones weathered and ancient. A single door, warped with age, stood at its base. There were no windows, no torches, only the heavy presence of something old, something that did not welcome her. With no other choice, Evelina reached out and knocked. The sound echoed unnaturally as if the tower itself were hollow. Silence. Then the door creaked open on its own. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old parchment, burnt herbs, and something metallic, blood, perhaps. A dim, flickering light illuminated the chamber, casting monstrous shadows against the stone walls. And at the center of the room stood him. The sorcerer. He was not what she expected. He was gaunt, his skin stretched too tightly over his bones. His long silver hair hung in tangled strands, and his eyes, deep-set, almost hollow, gleamed with something ancient and knowing. "You should not have come here," he rasped. Evelina swallowed hard. "I had no choice." The sorcerer studied her for a long moment, then gestured toward the wooden chair across from him. "Sit." She obeyed, though her body remained tense. The sorcerer turned away, moving toward a large wooden table covered in aged tomes, melted candles, and strange symbols drawn in ink that glistened like fresh wounds. He picked up a worn leather-bound book and ran his fingers across its cover. "The thing that follows you," he murmured, flipping through the brittle pages, "it is no ordinary demon." Evelina shuddered. "It came from the mirror. I shattered it, but now it's everywhere. In the shadows. In the reflections." The sorcerer's fingers paused on a page. Slowly he turned the book toward her. Her stomach twisted at the sight. A crude, aged illustration depicted a tall, faceless entity with hollow, black eyes. Beneath it, written in a language she did not understand, was a name. Orvith. "It was never inside the mirror," the sorcerer said. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it struck her like a blade. "The mirror was merely a seal, a prison crafted long ago by those who understood its evil." Evelina's breath caught. "Then when I shattered it, you did not free the demon." The sorcerer's hollow eyes met hers. "You gave it a host." She felt the blood drain from her face. "You gave it a host." The realization clawed at her mind. The whispers. The shadows that followed her. The feeling of something watching her from inside her own reflection. It was not just haunting her. It was inside her. The sorcerer closed the book. There is only one way to rid yourself of Orveth. A deep dread settled in her chest. Tell me. The sorcerer's expression darkened. You must return to the mirror's origin. To the place where the curse began. And there, he hesitated. Evelina clenched her fists. Tell me. You must trap it again, he said finally, his voice heavy. But this time, it will not go willingly. A sudden gust of wind rattled the tower's walls. The candles flickered violently, casting wild, shifting shadows. And then, a whisper. Not from the sorcerer. Not from the wind. From inside Evelina. I told you, little Evelina. You cannot run from me. The sorcerer's eyes widened. It knows. The shadows in the room moved. Something else was here. And it was no longer waiting. The air inside the tower turned heavy, thick like drowning in ink. Evelina could feel it pressing against her chest, a slow, suffocating force. The sorcerer's gaze darted toward the shifting shadows along the stone walls, his body stiffening. It is too soon, he muttered. It is getting stronger. Evelina barely heard him. A sharp pain lanced through her skull and suddenly the world tilted. The room blurred, the candlelight dimming into an eerie darkness. A low, distorted voice curled around her mind like a serpent. You should not have come here. Her vision swam. Her own limbs felt distant as though they were no longer hers. She reached for the table to steady herself, but her fingers twisted unnaturally as they touched the wood, longer than they should be, too pale, almost inhuman. A sob caught in her throat. It was inside her. The sorcerer slammed his palm onto the table and the room shuddered. A wave of energy pulsed outward, pushing back the creeping shadows. Fight it, he commanded. Evelina gasped, forcing air into her lungs, but her body resisted. A cold presence coiled around her spine, forcing her upright, locking her muscles in place. Her reflection in the window pane no longer matched her movements. Her reflection was smiling. Too late, the voice rasped through her lips, but it was not her voice. It was layered, distorted, something ancient speaking through her. She let me in. She broke the seal. She belongs to me now. The sorcerer's expression turned grim. Not yet, you wretched thing. He reached into his robes and pulled out a dagger. The blade was curved, darkened with ancient runes that pulsed faintly. Orveth, the demon inside her, laughed, a dry, rattling sound. Evelina's own hands moved without her will, reaching toward the sorcerer with fingers bent like claws. Will you cut her, sorcerer? Orveth taunted. Stain your blade with her blood? What if she does not survive? The sorcerer ignored it. With one swift motion he sliced across Evelina's palm. She screamed. The pain was real, but something else screamed with her, something inside her. Thick, black smoke poured from the wound, writhing like a living thing, its tendrils grasping at the air. The presence inside her shrieked, and for a moment, Evelina could breathe again. But Orveth did not leave. The shadows twisted violently and the tower shook. Candles exploded into bursts of black flame. The sorcerer staggered back, gripping the dagger tightly. Evelina fell to her knees, her mind spinning. She could feel Orveth still clinging to her, still burrowing deeper into her thoughts. We don't have much time, the sorcerer said, his voice harsh with urgency. You must go, now. Evelina lifted her gaze, breathless. Go where? The sorcerer's expression was grim. To the ruins where the mirror was first cursed. To the place where Orveth was bound centuries ago. A fresh wave of coldness flooded her veins at his next words. You must seal it again before it devours you completely. A shadow loomed behind them. The demon lunged, and the world went black. Darkness swallowed Evelina. She awoke to the sensation of cold stone beneath her hands. A deep, unnatural silence stretched around her, thick and smothering. For a moment she thought she had died. But then, get up, girl. The sorcerer's voice. Harsh, urgent. Evelina forced her eyes open. They were no longer in the tower. They stood before the ruins, an ancient, crumbling monastery swallowed by time and decay. Jagged spires loomed against the storm-ridden sky, and beyond them, a massive, broken altar stood at the heart of the ruins. Was there? The place where the mirror had first been cursed. The place where Orveth had been imprisoned centuries ago. And now, it was where Evelina would have to trap it again. A deep, rattling breath escaped her lips, only it was not her breath. She could feel it now, inside her bones, stretching through her veins like blackened roots. You are running out of time, the the sorcerer warned. Evelina staggered forward. Every step felt like wading through tar. Her limbs did not belong to her anymore. Her hands twitched, her skin rippled, something beneath it moving. Orvith was changing her. "You cannot stop me," the demon whispered from within. "You are already mine." No. Evelina clenched her teeth, forcing herself toward the altar. The sorcerer had already begun the ritual. He stood before the altar, carving symbols into the stone with his dagger. Ancient words spilled from his lips and the air trembled, a force older than time stirred. But Orvith would not go without a fight. Evelina collapsed. A scream tore from her throat as her shadow moved on its own, stretching, writhing, peeling itself from the ground like a second body. It was her shape, but taller, more twisted, its limbs impossibly long. Its face was her face, only wrong. Its mouth stretched into a grotesque grin. "This body is mine." The shadow lunged. Evelina barely rolled aside before its clawed fingers slammed into the ground where she had just been. The stone cracked and a freezing, deathly cold spread outward. The sorcerer did not stop chanting. Evelina had to act now. She reached into her cloak and pulled out the silver dagger the sorcerer had given her. Its hilt burned cold against her palm. "Use it," the sorcerer commanded. "Orvith is still tied to your body, you must wound yourself to wound it." The shadow lunged again. This time Evelina did not run. She raised the dagger, and drove it into her own chest. Bang! Blinding, searing pain. Orvith screamed. A black, horrid mass tore itself from Evelina's body, writhing like a living nightmare. Its form twisted and shrieked, caught between worlds, its hollow eyes wide with rage. The sorcerer threw a handful of blood-soaked ash onto the altar, the final step of the ritual. The ruins shook. The sky split open. A force stronger than anything Evelina had ever known pulled Orvith backward, dragging it into the altar. The demon's form melted, its screams turning into distorted echoes, stretching thinner and thinner until... Silence. The air was still. The storm was gone. And the presence was gone. Evelina collapsed, her vision darkening at the edges. She could hear the sorcerer's voice, distant, hollow. "It is done." And then, nothing. Epilogue. When Evelina awoke, the ruins were quiet. The sorcerer sat beside her, tending to the wound in her chest. "It is over," he said simply. The altar was now sealed, its surface smooth as if nothing had ever been carved there. Orvith was trapped once more. Evelina let out a shaky breath. She had survived. But she knew that something had changed within her. She would never look at her own reflection the same way again. This is purely a work of fiction, created from imagination. It is not based on real events.